My uncle worked for NASA, and here's what he said about the moon landing. My uncle was one of the smartest people I've ever met. He had a PhD in physics and spent most of his career working for NASA in the 70s and 80s. He wasn't an astronaut, but he was heavily involved in research and development for space missions. When I was a teenager, I asked him the big question: did we really land on the moon? He didn't laugh, didn't roll his eyes, just gave me this tired smile and said, "Kid, if you knew how many people it takes to fake something like that, you'd realize it's easier to just go to the damn moon." That answer has stuck with me ever since. My boss said I had to work late, so I forwarded his emails to HR. If you only read the title, I might seem like a petty employee, but trust me, this was long overdue. I've worked at my company for 2 years. My boss, Mike, had a habit of dumping extra work on me at the last minute. Always after hours, always urgent. At first, I thought it was normal, but then I noticed a pattern. My coworkers never got these late-night emails, just me. One night, he told me I had to stay late to finish a report he conveniently forgot to assign earlier. I had plans. I pushed back. He got weirdly aggressive, hinting that my dedication would affect my future here. That's when I started digging. I searched my inbox and found months of these urgent emails. Most weren't even necessary. Some even contradicted deadlines he had given others. Then I remembered something. HR had mentioned during onboarding that all emails were backed up on the company server. So I did what any overworked employee would do. I forwarded everything to HR with a polite inquiry. "Hey, I just wanted some clarification. I seem to be receiving significantly more after-hours requests than my peers. Is this standard practice?" I didn't hear anything for a week. Then, out of nowhere, Mike called me into his office. He looked pale. HR had flagged the pattern, compared workloads, and found a lot more than just unfair treatment. Turns out Mike had been diverting work from his own responsibilities onto me while claiming credit for my results. A week later, an all-company email announced that Mike was moving on to new opportunities. I left at 5 p.m. sharp that day. My husband has been secretly role-playing as a cat online for 3 years. Should I divorce or become his rival? I, 27F, just found out my husband, 30M, has been pretending to be a cat online for 3 years, and I don't know what to do. Okay, so I'm literally shaking while typing this. My husband and I have been married for 5 years, together for 7. He's always been kind of quirky, like he talks to our cat in full sentences, but I thought it was just cute or whatever. Last night I was using his laptop because mine died, and I noticed his Reddit was still logged in. I know. I shouldn't have snooped, but something in me told me to look. Y'all, this grown man, has been running a whole-ass cat roleplay account for 3 years. He writes in first person as a cat. Like, human forgot to feed me today. Vengeance will be swift. Time to knock glass from high place. But that's not even the worst part. He's popular. Like top posts, awards, thousands of followers. People genuinely think he's a cat. He has internet friends that think they're talking to some sassy British shorthair named Mr. Whiskers. He gets into fights with other cat accounts about territory and kibble brands. I went into the rabbit hole, and this man has a full-fledged cat nemesis named Sir Pounce-A-Lot. They have beef. There's literal fan fiction of their rivalry in the comments. When I confronted him, he just sighed and went, "You weren't supposed to find out like this." Like, find out what, sir? That I married Warrior Cat's fanfic roleplay Tumblr in human form? I don't know what to do. He's the love of my life, but I can't look at him without imagining him typing out Malem. The humans have displeased me once again. Do I divorce him? Do I make an account and become his rival? How do I move forward from this? I secretly recorded my professor making sexist remarks and got him fired. I, 26M, am in my final year of university, and I had a professor, let's call him Dr. R, who always made weird, inappropriate comments. At first, I thought he was just old-fashioned, but over time, I realized he was blatantly sexist. It started subtly. He would call on male students more often and dismiss female students' answers as lucky guesses. But as the semester went on, his comments became worse. He once said in class, "Women just aren't as naturally gifted in logic-based subjects." And another time, when a girl asked a question, he laughed and said, "If female students spent less time worrying about their looks and more time studying, maybe they'd get better grades." Whenever we had a difficult topic, he'd smirk and say, "This might be a little hard for the girls, but don't worry, just smile at your lab partners and they'll help you out." Then one day, he completely crossed the line. A girl in my class wore a tank top because it was hot outside. Nothing inappropriate, just normal summer wear. He paused the lecture and said, "Wow, dressing like that for extra credit? Bold strategy." Some people laughed awkwardly, but the girl looked mortified. She barely spoke for the rest of the class. That was when I decided to start recording. Over the next few weeks, I captured multiple instances of him making sexist comments. The worst was when he joked that women should focus on easier fields because STEM was too stressful for them. That one pissed me off because there were girls in the class working their asses off, and he was acting like they didn't belong there. I compiled everything and submitted it anonymously to the university's disciplinary committee. They launched an investigation, and within a month, Dr. R was fired. Now, some of my classmates, mostly the guys, are pissed at me. They say I ruined a man's career over a few jokes, and that I should have just ignored him. But a lot of the female students have thanked me, saying they've been uncomfortable in his class for years. My fiancée told me she was going on a girls' trip, so I had her plane ticket redirected. If you only read the title, I might sound like a controlling jerk, but I promise you I'm not. I've been with my fiancée, Rachel, for 3 years. We got engaged 6 months ago and everything seemed perfect, until I started noticing little things. Sudden late-night meetings, a new password on her phone, and the biggest red flag, a girls' trip she was oddly secretive about. I wasn't the jealous type, but something didn't sit right. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I checked our shared airline account. Turns out her girls' trip was actually a solo ticket to a tropical resort, booked under her name and another man's. I recognized his name, a friend from work. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I got to planning. I quietly canceled her ticket and rebooked it to her parents' house. Same departure time, just a very different destination. I also compiled all the evidence, screenshots, texts I found on her old tablet, and even a few Venmo transactions that made things obvious. The day of the trip arrived. I drove her to the airport, kissed her goodbye, and watched as she confidently walked inside. I had one of my friends tail her to see the moment she realized she wasn't heading to paradise with her affair partner. Her first call came 20 minutes later. I ignored it. The frantic texts followed. Rachel, why is my ticket wrong? Rachel said, well, where are my bags? Rachel, did you do this? I didn't reply. Instead, I group texted her, her parents, and her older brother with a simple message. Hey, Rachel's on her way to see you. She has something important to explain. Check your emails for the full story. Hope she has a great stay. Then I blocked her number. I don't know how things went when she landed, but judging by the 100 missed calls from her and a few from her mom, I'd say it wasn't pretty. Meanwhile, I changed the locks, packed up her things, and had them delivered to her parents' place. I spent that weekend with my best friends, having the celebratory drinks I didn't know I needed. So yeah, Rachel did go on a trip, just not the one she planned. Yeah. I discovered I could smell cancer as a child. Anyone else out there have this quirk? My relative is still alive and kicking, so no sad stuff. However, when I was young, I would spend nearly every week with her. She was just very sweet and doted on me a lot, which was a stark contrast to my tumultuous home life. So I loved staying with her. When I was around maybe like 6 to 8, I went to her house after going on vacation and she smelled so bad. As a child, just being a child, I was honest. She seemed hurt and took a shower, but the smell didn't leave. I hate to admit it, but I was so upset as a kid about the smell that I didn't want her to cook for me. The smell was just too much, and I have germophobic tendencies. In my child mind, the smell would get near my food, and I had a meltdown over it, which was probably really shitty to be on the receiving end of in retrospect. A few weeks later, I was back, and the smell was still there. I was relentless. It smells like a possum in the road I saw one time was the only way child me could explain what it was like to her. At some point, I think she either began to get worried and decided to go to the doctor, or just went for another reason. Thank God she did. Turns out she had melanoma. She had a procedure to remove the patches and made a full recovery. And after that, out of curiosity, she asked me if the smell was still there, so I hugged her tight to get a good whiff, and it was completely gone. A few years later, around maybe 10 to 13 years old, I went to visit her, and the smell was back. I told her, remember when you stunk? And she said, oh no. Do I need to go to the doctor again? This time she found out she was in one of the earlier stages of breast cancer and ended up getting a mastectomy, again making a full recovery. Smell went away. Third time was melanoma, again I'm pretty sure. But every time she's ever had cancer, I've caught it by scent. I'm curious if anyone else has ever smelled it. I've always had a very sensitive nose. I'm also curious if I only caught it because I know her smell well enough to notice if it changes, like I could maybe only do it if I know the person's usual scent. For those who maybe be wondering, it smells like that sickly sweet, rotting dead animal on a hot day. If you've ever had the displeasure of smelling such a thing, either way, pretty trippy. I have always been curious about it. No one else in my family smelled what I was smelling.